Hello and welcome to Cage Fighting. It's your main man Andy Gillies here. Hope everyone's doing well. Now we're into September. Only 2 months due until we get the old, the Coca-Cola van bringing Christmas and all the nonsense that brings with it.
Well, that is the normal way, but as we have both seen over this week, that I saw it in Home Bargains, you saw it in some other cheap establishment, that the old decor is out gleaming in tinsel wondery. But now, anything before Remembrance Day is just not acceptable. You can put it out, yeah, fine. No listening to any songs or anything like that. As soon as that 12th of November hits, I don't care about fake American, fake Christmas, whatever. No. As soon as that's out of the way, then we're fully in control for 2 months of festive goodness. But not yet. It is warm. Hello, everyone.
Hello, everybody. No, not. I'm not even entertaining. I think it's too early to have the pumpkins out, and it's started to creep into my house, much less Christmas stuff. So yeah, we're a long way off that yet.
Yeah, I've seen quite a bit. Like, it was the range where I saw the Christmas stuff yesterday, and it was like you had literally Christmas stuff, and then behind that was the Halloween stuff. Which surely that's the wrong way around from the start. But also, we're a good month before we should even be considering that.
It's like clothes shops now. You buy a season in advance, don't you? Which is great this time of year because all of the shorts and stuff that I'll wear all year round are all starting to get reduced.
Yeah.
Because like it's going into winter clothing and they want to get rid of it in stock, whereas it's my time to shine now. This is like my Boxing Day.
Well, that's what I did with the when in April time when Sports Direct put they were selling off the winter stuff from last year. So I've got that big Arsene Wenger bench coat ready and waiting. And it's been worn once just to try it on.
Excellent move. Yeah, I popped into Primani as well the other day, and it was just all like flannel shirts and plaid and everything, which is great because that's what I'm going to be wearing like most of the time. But also, I don't want to be thinking about it when I'm sat here in like 24-degree heat. It's a little bit too soon, isn't it? I think to be making that jump to Christmas wear at this point. Right, I suppose we better get on with some of the film news that's been going on lately. Obviously, the biggest news at the moment is that Hollywood is still on strike, and we've had plenty of film and TV which has been postponed. Sometimes it's been pushed back a little bit, other times it's just been indefinitely taken off the list. So it looks like all of the Avatar movies have been pushed back about a year or so at this point. Filming for Batman 2 now won't start until next year, where it was supposed to be starting next month. Beyond the Spider-Verse has been delayed indefinitely. Fast X Part 2 was in pre-production. That's now just completely stopped until after the strike's over. Ghostbusters Afterlife, which was due out in Christmas, now won't be out until March. There's been an impact on the festival scene too. Obviously, all the actors, they can't promote their films. So a lot of studios have just pulled the movies completely. So Challengers, which was the new Zendaya film, everything is basically ready to go on that film. It's complete. But the studio, which is MGM, have decided to push it back 7 months. So this was a film which had Oscar buzz. They were expecting it to do really well come next March when the next Oscars are out. But because they can't get Zendaya out there to do the press and walk the red carpet, they've pushed it back to April. So as far as I'm aware, the director and producers are absolutely livid because if you want to win an Oscar, releasing a film 11 months before the ceremony is generally not a good move. How do you see this, though? Like, he's getting the star to walk the red carpet at the premiere or at a film festival. Is it important? Like, do you need to see Chris Pratt, Anya Taylor-Joy and Jack Black dressed in their finest for you to go see Super Mario Brothers? Or is this just more of studio bullshit? What do you think, Stu?
I mean, obviously for me it is. But it's all part of the show. It's all part of the nonsense behind everything. Like when you were saying that about it's been pushed back and everything's all done, it reminded me of like Top Gun Maverick, where that was ready to go, but then all the COVID nonsense happened, and then that was pushed back 2 or 3 times when it could have been released, and they was like, oh well, we might as well just wait to get maximum eyes on it. But it seems like the same again. But people are going to go and watch it anyway. But at the same time, there is this whole thing of, we know older people still exist, sadly. And they do count things like red carpets and film shows and film review shows on BBC to get their opinion on things and to promote it to them, because otherwise they wouldn't be watching it, would they? So until they're gone, then this nonsense has got to continue. I mean, it's not nonsense, is it? It's part of the razzmatazz of it all. It's a bit of glitz and glamour, but you don't have this for animated films, obviously, do you? So, and it doesn't make any difference to them. So why would you continue doing it? It's one of them things. I did think for a brief second that, post-COVID, maybe this silliness will be over and we wouldn't have to do this anymore. And now we'll have to waste all this money, spending it all on silly little outfits and jazzing up places for one day only, and we'll go back to normal. And it's just gone back to normal like nothing happened. And it seems outdated, but I understand why they keep doing it, because people love it.
Matt, how do you feel about the premieres and the glitz and glamour that comes with Cannes, for example?
I mean, I think there's a certain element you've got to, from a studio's point of view, you've got to make people look like stars, and that's the way you do it. Make them not look like average Joe blogs. They need to be larger than life. They need to be inaccessible as well. Do you know what I mean? They're on the red carpet, and us mere mortals are not allowed to be in that area and look as good as these people, and you know, so they need to be recognised as stars. So I do get it, and you know, to Stu's point, weirdos that still watch terrestrial TV, for example, or just TV live, you know, in general. You've only got to put on like ITV4, and they have that like 60-second news bit, and it's always full of like, oh, the stars on the red carpet were out for this movie, and it'll show you a quick clip of it, or I don't know, Jonathan Ross or whatever, or Graham Norton and stuff like that. This is how people get of a certain, you know, generation or accessibility. It's how they get their information about new movies and stuff like that. And it's just all part of the promo piece. I think it is important that it still happens. It's just, it seems sillier and sillier and more grotesque in a world of, you know, such a divide between rich and poor. I don't want to get down that route with this or anything like that. I have just, you know, seen Oppenheimer recently, so I am very much in the communist, socialist way of thinking at present. But, yeah, I think it is a necessary evil, I think, in the film world.
Yeah, I get you. I mean, I sort of understand why we've got some of the films like Ghostbusters Afterlife, for example. They will be working right up until the day before it's due to be released. I understand why that's being delayed, because they will need to be doing some VFX. But stuff like Challengers, that's not going to be CG heavy. That just seems like it's purely for fiscal reasons why it's been delayed. So we're going to end up with this massive gaping hole of nothingness again, aren't we? Where we're going to have to try and catch up on all the nonsense that's been missed out because of this.
Well, let's have it right. These people striking, it's the same reason why Lost was ruined, and I never forgive them for that. So, you know, the whole industry, when it goes on strike, has a lot to answer for, ruining the greatest television show ever created. So I have very little sympathy, and let's just get on with it.
I was watching a TikTok earlier, and it was about the worst final seasons of any TV show, and I think they put Lost in number 4. We said actually it was the last 3 years of it were just awful.
I think that the last one wasn't as bad as it had been the year before. I was one of the few people who actually liked the last year because it made some kind of sense, but it had been already so, like Matt said, it had been hijacked so badly by that point that it was like, well, this is all we can do.
Not to ruin it for anybody that might be listening that hasn't seen it and might eventually watch it, but you know, there's the season where you had the John Locke revelation at the end. Was that 4? Or I can't remember which one it was, but it wasn't its peak, because I think the first 2 seasons were way better than that. But that's after that point was where it really dropped off for me.
I watched up until the end of the season where they end up on the other side of the island, and there's like some Titan-style statues that have been cut off at the ankles. And I think they've only got like 4 toes or something weird about them. I think that was the third season, and that was the one where I dipped out because it was just asking so many questions, but wasn't giving us any answers. So I'd just given up at that point.
See, at the time though, because it was the first one, and probably still the only one that did it like that, where, I mean, they admitted after that a lot of it they just made up as they went along. Where you had things like 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, 42.com, which was a fan site, which was an early forum, I suppose, but it was in the early days of forums, where you had theories every single week, and it was amazing. Like some of the theories ended up being better than what we actually got. But being part of it as a week by week basis, and that's never going to happen again anyway. But for what it was at that point in time, being completely immersed in all of the whole stuff away from the show, it was incredible. And it's never going to be it can't be replicated now because there's too much stuff going on, and you ain't going to get people sitting around watching something weekly like we did with Line of Duty, and that's not going to have fan pages, is it? So it was completely unique, and it was just a shame that it was ruined by strike action.
I think the only other thing that I can think of recently would have been the Batman having elrataelada.com or whatever it was website on there. But you are right, we're never going to get that again on that scale that we got with the original Lost. Nothing's ever quite been appointment TV like Lost. I think it's just the way of the world now, isn't it, with streaming and everything. We don't have that 1 hour per week. And that was the last of the old guard, I feel like it was. Next up on the news block, Cameron Diaz. It was her 51st birthday last week. Happy birthday, Cameron, if you're listening. I hadn't quite realised how long she'd actually been away from Hollywood for. So her career ran from 1994 to 2014. Then she got into like health, science. She released a couple of books. She invested in health, biotech, environmental causes. And then she stepped away from the camera really just to focus on parenting. But she's coming back. So she's currently, obviously they're on strike at the moment. She's touted as being in a Netflix action comedy film with Jamie Foxx called Back in Action. I looked at Cameron Diaz's career. It's quite interesting. You see, she's got these very silly comedy films right at the start of her career where she's very much eye candy. And she was hot shit back in the day, like everyone wanted her in the movies. Then she progressed into something a little bit more dramatic and then went back to comedies that were very much diminishing returns towards the 2010s. But there are some decent films in there. Matt, anything of Cameron Diaz's that you'd recommend people to watch?
Well, really. That's awful. But, like, I don't think she's ever put in a performance that, not that I've seen anyway, that makes you go, have you seen that one from Cameron Diaz? Oh, she's really stepped out of her shoes from a comedic actress to XYZ. Like when Will Ferrell did
Stranger Than Fiction.
Yes, or like Lee Evans did a film called Freeze Frame, which was like completely different to anything like comedic. I've never seen anything of her of that makes me think she stepped outside of that kind of role. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with being in schlocky comedies if that's your bag. And she doesn't strike me as somebody that takes herself particularly too seriously as like well, mind you say if you invest in tech and you're into science, it only leads down one Tom Cruise shaped cult. But nothing really that stands out to me. I mean, Bad Teacher wasn't too bad, to be fair, as a kind of a bit different from the family friendly Shreks of the world, I guess.
I mean, like obviously when it comes to comedy, there's something about Mary I think is quite a legendary comedy of its time. That's quite high on the block, I think. Stu, have you got anything that you think she's particularly good in?
I mean, I did think he was making a pun then, but how he did it so straight-faced, saying in her shoes, which I have seen, and it's a thing with her sister, which was, again, not very good. But my first one, I mean, obviously it's coming up to that time of year. I mean, The Holiday, I think The Holiday is a really sweet, nice film in its own right.
Get the fuck out of here.
It's not for me, but I know the one you mean.
Yeah.
I have an issue with Jude Law. I don't know what it is. Cannot fucking stand it. But yeah,
It's his robotic face. That's the problem.
it is, isn't it?
Again,
Gangs of New York. Good in Gangs of New York. That's a great film as well. I mean, Party Marty's always good for a movie, you know.
yeah, but is she good in it though? This is a problem. She's not bad. And she's not bad in Vanilla Sky either.
I quite like Vanilla Sky. I feel like she's a good part of an ensemble, if not necessarily the leading lady.
Yeah. That's to the words right out of my mouth. Yeah, she doesn't need to be first or second billing because she's just nice, and she's just nice to be there. And when she's doing it in a comfort zone of the late 90s, early 2000s stuff, great. You know what you're getting. And even Charlie's Angels, which was shit, but it was fun. And she was having a whale of a time. So good luck to her. But yeah, the thing is, even at 50 odd years old, if there's a film with Cameron Diaz, I'll go and watch it. Just if nothing else, just to look at her. But she's there's a lot worse people out there than Cameron Diaz.
Absolutely. The other film I'd make mention of as well, being John Malkovich, which is by Spike Jonze, who is not Spike Jonze, sorry. Yes, sorry, no, Spike Jonze, who we know from Adaptation. And it's very an adaptation-y type film, I think, as well. So I think that's a good one worth watching if you're ever in the mood for some Ms. Diaz. Blue Beetle, the run has ended at the cinema. So this is a character that James Gunn has referred to as the first character of his revamped DC cinematic universe. The run has ended at the cinema, though, with a box office of only $86 million. I think it's had about a $110-ish million budget, so it's fallen well short of it. Such a pity, because I thought that film was way better than expectations, especially off the back of The Flash. Is this superhero fatigue, poor advertisement campaign, people lacking faith in DC? Stu, why didn't this hit the highs?
I'm going Wednesday to see, finally. That kind of says it all, really, doesn't it? That I haven't seen anything, obviously by choice, other than the first trailer. But it just looks a bit shit. Who cares? Who cares about this thing? Who cares about Blue Beetle? What is it? No one knows what it is. And it's like, it's got the same kind of mere mortal recognition as Spawn did back in the 90s. And like after 33 Marvel films and 2 good DC ones, and then the catastrophe worldwide that was The Flash, no one cares, do they? You see Blue Beetle I think it's more damning the fact that it was in the middle of the summer holidays as well. All the kids were off, and still no one went to see it. And there's only so much you can scrape the barrel for characters that no one cares about, other than you. And I will. I mean, look, how you were getting yourself all overhyped about it, and afterwards, and getting all, I would say praiseworthy, but you were more than that. It was like Oppenheimer levels compared to where you went in with it. But yeah, it's one of them, mate, that, like with the second Shazam, which I've not seen and I won't see, who cares anymore?
Yeah, I get you. It's a shame because it was a really fun little film, and that might be in part to the fact that I was expecting it to be terrible. So the fact that it was more than certainly helped. Matt, I mean, I know you're very much off the superhero train at this point, but what is it? Why has Blue Beetle just failed to get the masses behind it?
Well, to quote the late, great Tina Turner, we don't need another hero. You know, it's just we're done now, aren't we? With it, it's the moment's past of it. The appetite's not there. You can have the colossal coming together of superheroes like the Flash, and people have just lost interest. Like the end game or the Infinity War saga killed the superhero film by being as almost perfect as it was. It was never going to get better than that, and it's ultimately been its demise. there's got to be someone. If someone hasn't wrote a book on how the perfection is killed off the art form of those movies, then we should, because it's true. It's never been the same since. It's like in Peep Show when Dobby and Jez said, I haven't enjoyed the news since 9/11 because it's been so boring. It's the same kind of thing. It's just nothing seems to get people as excited as people did during that time period, and something would have to change quite a bit to get people excited again about that genre. Whether it be, I don't know, something huge would have to happen, like completely against maybe even the actual things that goes on in the comic book, a completely different arc or something. I don't know, but I don't know where it goes from now. Really, they're not going to stop making the films because they'll still generate money, but at the expense of quality, I guess.
It's diminishing returns, isn't it? In a visual, artistic terms, it's just not hitting. Even the uber popular Marvel films, a lot of people are starting to sort of see through them a little bit. And like, there was always a franchise that, no matter how bad it was, the reviews were always mega positive. But not anymore. People are starting to see the holes that are in a lot of the films, and I think it's getting a bit of a reappraisal. So, yeah, it needs something drastic, I think, to turn it around, but fuck knows what that's going to be at this stage, because they feel like they're a bit too far down the rabbit hole with it. At the other end of the scale, though, Barbie is now the biggest box office film of 2023. It crossed over from Super Mario Brothers movie, so it was at $1.36 billion worldwide. The other big hitter of the summer, obviously, is Oppenheimer, which is currently just under 800 million, which is an outstanding number for an R-rated film, let alone a 3-hour melodrama, and one that's not tied to an existing IP like Joker and Deadpool, which are the other 3 films in the top 4. As of last week, Oppenheimer was on 790. The only R-rated film above that is Joker, which is on 1.074 billion. So we're looking at probably about 300 million short of that. Oppenheimer will probably get a second run at the cinema come Oscar time, especially if we are in a bit of a hole when it comes to, no new films coming in at that point because of the strikes and stuff. Do you think Oppenheimer stands a chance of actually taking over and becoming the number 1 R-rated film, Bass?
Oh, I don't think so, personally. Only because, and I saw it really late, but if you haven't, only filmy type people will see Oppenheimer, right? The people that do podcasts on film, you know what I mean? Like, nearly all of my friends haven't seen Oppenheimer. All of them saw Joker. Do you know what I mean? The people who aren't mad into films. And it's stunned that he's done the numbers that he has already. Because, in any other world, without this whole Barbenheimer thing, this is a film in another universe where it goes, well, it never really got its flowers, but what an amazing film it was. Do you know what I mean? So I don't think it will surpass that number, because those that have really enjoyed it and went to go see it don't want to put themselves through it again. I certainly won't. I don't know if I'll ever watch it again. I had a great time with it. I thought it was excellent, but I don't think I'd put myself through it again. And I don't think the more casual people to film would want to commit themselves to it when, sadly, cinema is disposable. They'll wait till it comes on an IPTV or wait till it comes on a streaming service. So no, I don't think it will, sadly.
I think I'm in agreement. I loved it, and it's probably my film of the year so far. I think it's outstanding. But also, I've seen Barbie twice. I've seen Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 times. I've only seen Oppenheimer once, because it's a 3-hour commitment. And it's finding that 3 hours to watch it multiple times. And that's how these films get over $1 billion. Tends to be people who go back and watch it 2-3 times. And I don't think Oppenheimer has got that, because, as I said, it's a 3-hour melodrama. It doesn't have quite that same pull of bringing people back into the cinema. And I can't wait to see it again. I just don't want to see it at the cinema because there's going to be something new to watch. Stu, what do you make of it all?
Yeah, I am watching it again there. I'll watch it at home I said when Matt said he might not ever watch it again, I'll watch it when I get the Blu-ray. Inevitably, when I get the Blu-ray of it, and then I probably won't watch it for another 10 years or so, because it's. Let alone, it doesn't really matter to me about the time commitment, because it is what it is. I mean, I watch Lord of the Rings all the time, but it's so fucking intense. It's not exactly nice sitting there watching that again, but it's a masterpiece, and I am amazed that it's done as well as it has. If by some weird quirk of the world that this film has benefited from the Barbenheimer thing rather than the other way around, then fair play. I mean, they've obviously both cannibalised each other in a way, but I understand why it for me, it won't ever beat Deadpool or anything like that, because it's too intense. Yeah, it's an R-rated film. I think it's probably an R-rated film mainly because it's too serious and kids wouldn't get it, more than the fact that it's violent.
Yeah, I mean, Deadpool's only really an R-rated film because there's bad language in it and blood. Because I think if you were to take away those two elements, there's nothing grown up about that film. It's a fucking kids' film that just happens to use the word cunt in it the odd occasion. Joker, I think, is a little bit different. I do think there's more grown-up themes to it, but even so, I think that could probably have been a 15, to be perfectly honest. Hey-ho. Right, that's the news for this week. Matthew, have we had any listener questions?
We certainly have. We'll start off with Andrew Wright, who wants to know, have you ever gone on strike or metaphorically down tools solely to progress your own interests? This is a crossover between this and Wall's Fancast, really, but have you ever gone on strike or metaphorically down tools? They say that quiet quitting is the new thing of this generation, by basically putting in the absolute bare minimum effort in a role you're in. But have you ever gone on strike? Stu, have you ever down tools?
I mean, I do the bare minimum every single day, but I suppose I'm not down tools in a sense like that, but I have done stuff where I've been asked to do things and I haven't been provided with the tools to do properly, so I've refused to do it. And then that has been resolved through them giving me things to do it with. So I guess so, in a roundabout way, but not in a, I will sit on the floor and protest like a climate lunatic. No, I haven't gone that far.
Andy, what about yourself?
I've been on like proper strike. I mean, I'm a civil servant and member of the union. So when they tell us that we can't work that day, like I've been on strike, I've been to the marches and seen like what they've done and stuff. It's quite interesting. And plus, whenever my boss has pissed me off in the past, I'm like, because the way I work, I would tend to do more than my fair share. I've always worked quite hard to get my, whatever the target is, I always like to hit it and get a little bit extra. But as soon as my boss pisses me off, they're going to get the bare minimum. Like, it's never going to be so little that they're going to be able to shoot me down. But I won't go above and beyond. I will give them the bare minimum and they can't argue with it. It's the best way to work, I think. If they wanted to do 10 doodahs a week, you do 10 and no more. You can save the next one for next week.
Yeah, that's always like, I remember hearing before about, if you go into like a factory or something, you'd end up ousting yourself by being like a massive performer, because then everybody else would be expected to reach your standards. So keep that in mind, kids. Right, okay. Next question. Dave Evans, is there a franchise like Star Wars, Harry Potter, etc., that if offered the chance you wouldn't take part in, even if it was a walk-on cameo, because it would spoil the illusion of the show for you? Andy, is there anything that you wouldn't want to see behind the fourth wall and ruin it?
I don't know if there is, to be honest, because I quite like the other side of the camera stuff when it comes to, finding out about films and what have you, because there's always as much drama off screen as there is on screen in these things. I think it'd be quite interesting to get behind the camera and see how the sausage is made on a Star Wars or something like that. Yeah, I don't think there is. I think I'd be quite happy to see what's going on.
How about you, Stu?
Yeah, I think I'd be the same. I think it's weird because you go from things like when you play, say, a Star Wars or a Marvel game, you're putting yourself in there anyway as a kind of roundabout way in the character creation and stuff like that. So you are kind of throwing your image in there. Obviously, it's not you, but still. No, I don't think I would either. I think if I hadn't been blinded by the extras on the Matrix video back in the day to see how they did bullet time, and the wonder of cinema would have been kept as a magical place, then I think I probably would have done. But because it's so cynical now, I don't think so. No, I'd embrace it fully.
You, Matt, because you're very much into the Harry Potter thing, would seeing them not have sparks come out of the end of their wand actually would that turn you off watching it, do you think? Or
No, I don't think so. I think more things with like your comedy show, your panel shows and stuff like Taskmaster and other things, seeing like, you know, if it's not quite as improvised as you think it is or those kind of things, would really be a bit of a, oh, that's how it's done kind of, you know, like, you know, I think that'd be the one the most that would sour it for me. I do remember a few times we went to go watch, me and my mate Rob went to go watch Jeremy Kyle being filmed. And he would come out and do like a bit of stand-up beforehand. And we all knew he was a bellend to begin with. That's, you know, that's fine. But it was even more so he was like a massive twat. And he came out to a song, and I can't picture what the song is in my head. I've desperately been trying to Google it while we've been talking. It's not simply the best, but it's something along those lines. Like basically, you know, like the best around. He's the best around. Nothing's going to ever keep you down. One of those kind of things.
yeah,
One of those kind of songs. But it wasn't that one either. Skin Dread like finished their sets with it as well. I will find out by the end of the podcast and tell you what it is. But yeah, watching Jeremy Kyle film was bizarre because you come in, so you can picture the stage in front of you, like the blue backgrounds, but like you just walk through the back of it and it's just these backdrops that are like barely stood up by a tiny pit like plinth, and then you're out onto the stage and you're like, oh, this really isn't like what's felt like an expensive setup that you see on TV. It really is just like when Roddy Piper hit Jimmy Snooker with a coconut and then the backdrop falls down and you're just in like this set in the background. It's kind of ruined the whole pizzazz of the thing.
Mm.
There we
Well,
go.
Frankie Boyle used to do a podcast where he would, he only did like maybe 2 episodes of it, but he got some of the questions from Mock the Week and he would test them out on an audience. You know, the lines we'd like to see.
Yeah.
So yeah, it very much was, they would workshop it for a week and then rock up to actually do the recording. I'm sure like the recordings were 2 hours long for a 30-minute show. Yeah, I think that would actually take a bit of the magic away because it seems so snappy when you watch it on TV.
Yeah, and I think going to like a work in progress show from a comedian as well would be, you know what I mean? I think it would kind of ruin a bit of the. I don't know they have to exist. I'm not no problem with that, but I think it would be one of those things where it would kind of take away the not the Hollywood of it, but you know what I mean. Kind of take away the spectacle of the occasion, I guess.
Yeah.
That happened when I went to watch X Factor being filmed in the audition stage at the O2, and we were there for 4 or 5 hours. We were there a long time, and the queues were all the way round back. You know where it goes. The car park was completely full of just people, and so all that stuff where they show you from above, all the lines and everything, that's just people queuing to get in to watch. It's not for people to go into audition, and there were 4 people who were good. There were about 10 others who were obviously really shit, and you're just there to take the piss out of. But there was no like middling ones there at all. It was either one or the other, and obviously you go through a production stage as well, and especially at that time anyway, before they kind of announced how these things were done. So it's not the whole thing of, oh yeah, this is not the first time. It's the first time the judges had seen them, but to everyone else, it was already picked up and it was already they'd gone through 4 stages already to get to that stage.
Jeez.
So it was nothing like what it was advertised at the time. And it was like, well, okay, so we're all queuing up here, and is the people going in and with the numbers, and no, it's just all the show.
Well, I can confirm the song was "Nobody Does It Better." That's what
Carly Simon.
Yeah, that's like what he would come out to do his little bit of like stand up before he then ruined someone's life and put them on the path to kill themselves. But there we go. Ash Dolan, as your perfect night out, name your drinks of choice. Do you stick to just beer or a spirit? Are you a real man and drink pretty colourful drinks as they actually taste nice? Stu, talk me through a night out, the perfect night out for you drinks-wise.
Well, we kind of had the perfect night out many times, haven't we? It always starts off on copious amounts of different real ale until it gets too much, and then you switch to hooch, which is the obvious answer. and it will always be the case. And if not hooch, it'll be Blue Wicked or other varieties of alcopops, which we're way too old to be drinking.
Fair. Andy, what about yourself?
I mean, I with the best will in the world, I like to try and start with a beer, but I always find that they just end up sitting really heavy on your stomach, and so I tend to just switch then to vodka and or whiskey or shorts. Unless I'm with Stu, then it tends to be or there's some fluorescent piss water that's, I should say, we're too old to be drinking, but somehow we still do.
I tend to start with a few beers, and then, I'm used to a world of drinking, like my choices of drinking by necessity based on my budget. So it's not normally like what I want to drink, but then when the time comes, I'm pretty quick to jump on a Jack Daniels and Coke. That's the drink I feel like I can drink consistently, like for a long period of time, and never be too pissed. I feel like it's just my body just accepts it. I do like cocktails though, very much so. I went on a night out recently where, I was perilously close to my overdraft, and I was like, oh, this could be future Matt's problem. I'll pay for it on the night on my credit card. So future Matt was like, I know what I'll have. My first 2 drinks. I'll have 2 espresso martinis as my first round, because they were like 2 for 16 or something stupid like that from wherever we were. And yeah, when future Matt met like current day Matt, when the credit card statement came in, that wasn't a good time. It wasn't a good time at all. So generally speaking, beers. Then when I'm thinking, we're moving on to maybe somewhere else, or I know that sooner or later I'm going to have to get my dancing shoes on, then it's Jack Daniels and Coke, and that's me for the rest of the night. Then sorted.
I do like a nice Strongbow or something if I'm drinking out of cans, which is only like Blast Off and like scummy places around Wolverhampton. A can of Strongbow, I don't think you can beat. I don't know what it is. It's just something about that's as close to cocktail as you can get without just being a cocktail almost.
I mean, if you're talking about that place, I mean, you talk Jamaica's finest. We're not mentioning it all here. The old Red Stripe.
Yeah, it's all right, but I was not massively into lagers and beers and stuff. So yeah, it's cider.
Huge Red Stripe, to be honest. Like if it tasted like Jamaican ginger cake, then maybe I'd be more into it. But sadly, it doesn't. Thomas Keeney wants to know, what was the first film you remember watching that had no credits before the film started?
It'd be a Bond film. It'd have to be, because I can't think of anything else.
Because I'm sure it wasn't the first one. Was it Citizen Kane, where they completely changed the way it was done? I'm sure it was something like Citizen Kane, or maybe a Hitchcock film. Because I don't know if it's SAG or their equivalent, said that you had to have credits at the beginning and credits at the end. So they changed it around for one of those films and then showed like 2 sets of credits at the end. The first one I remember seeing might have been like Clockwork Orange or something. Because I don't really remember much of the Bonds.
I think it would be A New Hope for me, I think. Would have to be the earliest one I can remember, you know.
It's a good question, that is.
Yeah,
I'm going to have to Google it and find out which the first film was, because that's going to... I remember doing it at uni for some reason. It might have been Full Metal Jacket. Because I remember watching that, and that might have been the discussion about the credits.
Well, speaking of which, Stu, Matt Cunnington wants to know, is it time to call a day for James Bond? For me, it's a yes. I can't really see where they go from here that doesn't just rehash old ground. As an Octopussy, Stu, what are your thoughts on Bond? Where does it go from here? You know, with the whole Daniel Craig saga of like coming to a close, and I think that was, you know, there was a couple of stinkers in there, but it wasn't a great set of films as a story from start to finish. Can they really do Bond, which is just standalone films now? Like, are people expecting it to be these kind of drawn out, big multi-film stories as well?
I mean, I love them. And it's people have had enough time now. If you ain't seen it, it's tough. But there's a very definitive end to the last Bond film, which means they can't write anymore. So if they're going to turn James Bond into a black transvestite lesbian, whatever, who cares? That's the only way you're going to do it, or have 20 years off, because there's literally no point. We've had the different eras of it, and I don't see where you're going to go from what Daniel Craig was doing to recasting it as someone younger to do the same again, where you can't do the one-liners and the 70s kind of schlocky misogyny and that kind of stuff. It just won't work anymore unless you kind of based it like that and then you're spoofing yourself, which they're not going to do that. Do you turn it into, I don't know, do you turn it into a Bourne film, which they kind of tried to anyway? What's the point in doing that? So if it was my choice, I wouldn't even touch it for a long, long time at best, because he did a great job in the end for doing a Bond film in this era. I don't see, like we already said about superhero fatigue, I don't see where the money's going to come from, and are people really going to be interested? Because they didn't really show up for the last one either.
Andy, what about you?
Potential spoiler alert. I've got a question to ask about the films that I don't know. So skip ahead a minute if you don't know and you want to know, or you don't want to know about Bond. Did they establish James Bond, as being his code name, and he's actually, Stephen Jones? No. That he is actually James Bond. Okay. I wasn't sure if it was a moniker that was given to 007 or whatever it was.
No, because you see in the gravestones and stuff, and like in Skyfall, where they go to his dad's grave, and his dad is called Bond. And
okay, I get you.
Right. Yeah, it's like when they had the female Bond, and they teased that with the Queen of Our Hearts, who we'll get to soon. She's it was almost like a piss take having a black woman given 007. 007 was the moniker, James Bond was the man.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, as to the actual question, I would have no issue if they just left it. I've never really been a Bond fan of the old ones. The 1.5 of the new ones that I've seen are a bit shit. It just does nothing for me. I think the only way that they could carry it on would be by completely changing the character. So we could see through somebody else's eyes rather than just a straight white male that we've seen 30 films of at this point. Is it 28? Something like that. But change it up, give us something fresh, because how many more stories of the same do you want to give us? And as Stu pointed out, it didn't do all that well last time out. So we've got diminishing returns. If people aren't paying for it, why not try something different?
The only story I wouldn't mind seeing is more of like an overarching universe story of when M sold out the guy from Skyfall. Can't remember what his name was. But like
that guy.
Yeah, that universe of like the bureaucracy side of it, and like M being more like the political side of it, like the political espionage, that kind of world would be fine. It doesn't necessarily need to be a Bond thing, but it could like wink, wink, nudge, nudge that world. But kind of like how Mission Impossible isn't always, well, at least the first couple, and I'm basing this purely off the N64 game, by the way, is all about kind of, it's about the agent's identity and keeping it a secret and that kind of world. I think that would be fine, but it couldn't just be a Bond film. It doesn't have to have the central character of Bond. It can just be about the organisation itself. It's the only thing I think I'd be willing to.
It's quite interesting because, I mean, obviously, it's sort of spiritual evolution in John Wick. We're getting the Continental, which I think is either Friday coming or next Friday. So we're getting that expanded universe coming from John Wick, and I'm really quite excited about that. I think that should be excellent, especially when we get Ballerina in a year's time as well, hopefully. So, I mean, that could potentially be a route to more Bond as well, if they were to go in a similar route.
Well, that's all the questions for this week, a bumper Q&A section. So thank you very much, as always, for everybody for getting in touch. Ask it, we will answer it. Nothing is off limits, so get in touch next time.
Super. Thank you very much, Matthew. Moving on to the hot take corner. So last week was the yesterday Ana de Armas court case issue was decided to be thrown out by the judge. If you've missed the story on this one, two men rented the film on Amazon Prime, assuming de Armas was actually going to play a substantial role in the movie. However, she was entirely cut from it. One of the two men then rented the film for a second time, this time on the Google store, assuming it might be a different cut, thinking it might be a director's cut. But obviously it wasn't, it was the exact same film. So they tried to sue for $5 million for being misled. The case was thrown out as a self-inflicted injury. The fact that they rented it for a second time without doing any due diligence to make sure that this film was what they were actually looking for was really a nail in their coffin. So it got binged. Richard Curtis said that he removed Armas's character after realising her role overpowered the main love story. So were the two men reasonable was this a reasonable reaction? Is $5 million a reasonable request for seeing a film without an actor that you liked? I mean, they haven't even said if they liked this film or not. Should you get a refund for a shit film, or is it luck of the draw? You pay your money, you take your chances. Matt, what's your opinion on this whole thing?
I mean, for the latter part of the question, is I only heard this story when you gave us the running order, so I'm a bit bemused as to what's going on. But do you get a refund for seeing a crap film? I don't know, but I don't know in what, like, why films should be. Mind you wouldn't, if you bought a CD, would you? You can't just take it back because you don't like it. Like, are there any forms of entertainment where you can get a refund? I guess is one of the questions. I'm trying to think now. Like, is there anything
you can do it on Steam?
You can do it with audio books, I guess. Like, I've done it a few times with Audible. But no, I don't think you are entitled to a refund if you don't like it, because I was going to say because subjectivity shouldn't be a measure of quality, but then some things are so bad that everybody's evident and can see it. But if that was the case, then I should have 700 quid in my back pocket from Wolves' season ticket last year. Do you know what I mean? And that ain't gonna happen. So no, probably not. If I have to suffer, so should you.
I mean, they have still consumed it, ultimately, haven't they? So you can't send a meal back once you've finished eating it because it wasn't up to your standards.
Well, speaking of which, me and Sam went to Mackey's earlier on the way back. So there was a food festival on in Tetnall Green, which was awful. And we were like, oh, come out all this way. £11 for loaded fries. Anyway, we drove to Mackey's on the way back, got some fries. I ate a few of them. They were really undercooked. Like, I held them up and they've instantly flopped over like a floppy erection. And then I went to take them back and I was like, listen, I don't mean to be like a diva here, but these are really undercooked. and she looked like I'd like gone in and basically tried to have my wicked way, because she looked at me when I went to the back. The manageress turned around and looked at me and gave me the side eye, and then she was like, "It's a different supplier. That's why they look pale." And I was like, "Oh, very polite." I was like, "This baby, it doesn't matter if you're black or white. It's not about the color of these chips. It's the structural integrity." And they just didn't get it. And I was like, man, I don't know how I got onto this, but it's basically people shouldn't be afraid of asking for their money back is what I'm trying to get at, because it happened to me and it was not right.
Was this the one in the Scotland or Bentley Bridge?
Bentley Bridge.
Mm.
And it has such a fast turnaround of food there because it's always rammed. You'd think that like it'd be okay, but no, it was disgusting, horrible.
So now when we went to the Scotland on Christmas Eve last year, and the girl completely forgot to bring it because it was one of them. Oh, go and park in the bay. I thought, okay, so we went and parked in the bay, and she bought it out, and she hadn't bought any of the drinks out at all, and so she walked away, and I was like, "Excuse me," the Kevin and Perry sigh. But she was eating a tip top at the same time. Christmas Eve. Well, eating a tip top on the job anyway, but still. But then she's just trudged back over and went, "Oh yeah, we need some sauces as well. Have you paid for them?" I went, "Well, yes, obviously." And okay then, and we're back. And she might as well just pissed in our face because she threw them through the window like it was an inconvenience because she'd forgot things. But that was the Scotland's one. Never go there. Never go Scotland. For me though, no.
When it was an outrage, that was.
Yeah. When it's Scotland's not Scotland, I'm sure that place is wonderful. Been there once. It was okay.
It is wonderful. I do like.
It's lovely.
Where I've been, it was very nice.
Well, I went to Celtic and the Gorbals, and they had that pub that had no windows. They were all bricked up, and the only natural light that was coming through was the them glass breeze block things that they'd stolen from the prison refit and used them in the wall. It was an amazing time. But yeah, I think refunds. You can't have £5 million for starters. That's just stupidity. But it's the same old thing. It's like we talked about with match tickets and like the Spurs fans last year, and they go all the way to Newcastle and get battered 5-0 within half hour. If they'd been winning 5-0 in half hour, would they have to pay more because they've been enjoying it more? Well, obviously not. So you buy your thing, you take your choice. It ain't like the cave days where you had no choice but to, it's just a random thing you rent from the video shop. You've got something called IMDb that everyone knows about. And if they can go to the trouble of doing all this nonsense, they can easily look up what this film was about. People are thick, basically.
Yeah, they really are. Yeah, I completely agree with both of you. I've seen some films. I'm sure I'd read somewhere that you're allowed to ask for a refund if you do it before the film is actually finished running. But I wouldn't dream of that because just because it's shit, that's not their problem. That's not like Cineworld's fault that it's a bad film. It's just a luck of the draw, isn't it? You never quite know what you're going to get. And even if it's a great film, you never know how you're going to react to it. You might not enjoy something that's brilliant or vice versa. But let's just say it's the luck of the draw with it. So it's absurd. But to be asking for $5 million when it hasn't even affected them, realistically speaking. It's not them who've been cut out of the film. It's Ana de Armas. And she's obviously okay with it because she's got paid her wage. So, I don't know who they're trying to argue the toss for. So I'm kind of glad the judges just said, no, you're an idiot and go away. I think that's the right reaction. Especially in a country as litigious as America can be, where they tend to accept any old bullshit when it comes to suing people. So I think that's the right response. The non-film question is next, and it's mine this week. What is the podcast which got you into listening to podcasts? Stu.
I'm kind of torn on this because it's one of two things. It's either Podcast Beyond which was and well still is PlayStation podcast and again Colin Murray, who was on that. He's now doing his own thing in Last Stand, and Greg Miller went on to do Kind of Funny. But that was when you are talking at the very, very start of it. Because I used to listen when I was at work. I had this one of them handheld DAB things that had a rechargeable battery in it. So I had that in my back pocket with wired earphones through and under my t-shirt and stuff. So I was listening to that. But obviously, as time went on, when I was like going underground, there was no signal, was there? So that's when I started. I thought, well, when I was painting the conference room at the Moon, and I ended up listening to Gaga's first album because that's all was on Mrs. iPod, sorry, because mine was broke by that point. So I'm guessing around about 2009, 2010, and it would have been on the Football Ramble or Podcast Beyond. They were both around the same time, so I don't know which one came first, but they were definitely the first two that I had on and I was subscribed to religiously from then on.
I was going to say, you still subscribe to both of those now, aren't you?
Yeah. Ramble's even better now than he was before. I mean, they're a nice little mention for Tiggy Rainbow as well on a Friday, which is a deep cut from back in the day, years ago, when me and Dave used to listen to it.
No, I stopped listening during the pandemic, I think. When went daily, it just sort of wasn't the same show anymore. Matt, what about yourself? What was your first podcast that got you into it?
I don't know, like, I wasn't really into podcasts until I was on Fancast. I started with Fancast, and that was only about 3 or 4 years ago. I'm never really just into the medium of it. Like, listening to them, I think probably like Talk Is Jericho was probably the first one I listened to, maybe. I then got into the Ramble, which I really enjoyed, but like I find it hard to like consume it daily. Like I remember I liked it when it was kind of sparingly being fed to me. Like now, so I'm listening to Michael Vittorio's Guide to Parenting. I'm listening to audiobooks. I'm listening to music. I'm trying to occasionally listen to TalkSport. I only have so many driving hours in the day, and that's the only time I listen to anything that isn't just straight up music. So yeah, I think it would have been Talk Is Jericho, I think, back when he was advertising for Omaha Steaks every 5 minutes. Where he has no ads now. It's loads better.
To be fair, I haven't listened to Talk Is Jericho for quite some time. It's only really when there's someone on I'm like even vaguely interested in, which it's getting too many like rockers who I don't know who they are on there, so I just don't tend to bother that much anymore.
I'm because I won't get it in at any other point. I'm listening to James Acaster's book. I can't remember what the title of it is, but he's basically says tongue in cheek that 2016 was the best ever year for music, and he talks about his year in music. And whilst it's a fun listen, and I do quite like James Acaster, it does kind of hammer home the point there is nothing worse in life than a middle-class white person into hip-hop. Like, there is really not much worse in the world than that.
Yeah. Have you listened to his album?
No.
I can't remember. It's not James Acaster, I don't think. It's like his band's name, but I think he's pretty much like produced it and stuff. It's a bit of a tricky listen. Like I really couldn't get into it at all. But he had a podcast as well as that book, which I can't remember what it's called either. And it's all about, he would give one of his friends an album from 2016, and then they would sit and talk about it. It's just so wanky at points.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I will, come the end of the book, listen to the playlist he put together of like songs from those albums, and I'm sure there'll be some gems on there. But like, one of the things I heard earlier today was, XYZ, a real visionary, he decided to make a rock album using only the recorder. And I'm like, oh, God. Oh, this sounds terrible.
It does, doesn't it?
But I do really like James Acaster, and like, it's a bit about the music and then a bit about a really awful year in his life and how music got him through it, which is something I can relate to very, very heavily. So it's still a very good listen.
I think the album is Party Gator Purgatory.
Okay.
It is on Spotify. You'll hate it, Matt. I know you will hate it.
So I just had a look. Podcast Beyond 200, which is one of the first ones I remember listening to, that was in 2011. So I've definitely listened to it for a good 13 years. Well, listen to the people on that show for 13 years. And probably Fancast is probably up there as well, in a weird way, because I listened to it definitely from the Meek days. So that was, I think Dave said that was about 3 or 4 years in. So you're talking probably around about a similar kind of time as well.
Yeah. My first podcast, I'd got into it with the Ricky Gervais show, which I think was it was a very early adopter, which was 2005, 2006. It was the first series of it. That was the first podcast I really got into. And I remember that they did quite a few audio books and all these other things that were effectively just podcasts, but they had to name them audio books because you had to pay for them, and you couldn't pay for a podcast, but you could pay for an audio book. So that was my first ever podcast. And then I think it was probably stuff like Last Podcast on the Left, which I think's been running since probably about the same time as your podcast, Stu. I'm sure that must have been 2010, 2011, something like that, possibly even longer than that one. That one's really good, where they do some stuff about conspiracy theories. They do stuff on ghosts and ghouls and, what's the one? Creepypasta. They do an episode about creepypasta. And then they'll do murder series where they've done 7 episodes on the House of Mormon and stuff like that. All these just random episodes. But it's such a good podcast. And I think that's probably the longest one I've been listening to. Been Last Podcast on the Left. That one's excellent. But yeah, Ricky Gervais was the very first one. And then it probably would be Fancast as well, would be up there as well for length of time. I think I started listening to that the season you joined, Stu, I think. Or is either the season you joined or the one before? I can't quite remember. I vaguely remember. Were you there in the League One days?
No, I was on Championship onwards.
So, I think it must have been the year before you joined then. And then I think, did I join a year after you or something?
Yeah.
It's the good old days. Right, moving on. Best of films. What have you been watching lately? Matt?
So, obviously I watched Oppenheimer at the cinema. First time I've been to cinema in ages, actually, which is a shame, but life gets in the way sometimes. Well, yeah, thoroughly enjoyed it. Thought it was excellent. It wasn't quite as tense as I thought it was going to be, based on kind of reviews. And the whole, you have to see it in IMAX, I don't really get, apart from maybe the sound fidelities required as opposed to the visual. But that aside, it was an excellent film that absolutely, whilst it might not be the most visual spectacle, the dialogue, the pacing, everything about it from that point of view was just wonderful. It was a work of art. Yeah, it really was. Really great film. I started watching How to Get Away with Murder again. I only watched series 1. I don't know why. I've got a feeling Netflix only had it when I watched it the first time round. I only had series 1 maybe, but it's kind of the show that me and Sam are watching together. It does stink of Channel 5 a little bit. Any show that demands that it has the studio or the distributor, it's AMC's How to Get Away with Murder. Well, this is ABC's How to Get Away with Murder. AMC's The Walking Dead kind of thing. I just find it weird that the studio is always so there's always something that makes me think this is going to be shit. But it's good. It's got quite a lot of twists and turns, but there is a bit of an element of Channel 5 about it. It's a bit schlocky at times, but it's good watching with your missus TV. To be brutally honest. And that aside, what else have I been watching recently? I'm in a bit of a snafu with Succession. I watched series 1 and I haven't gone back since. I started series 1. It was excellent. Really enjoyed it. But like, that's a show that's so intense at times. I felt like I needed a bit of a break from it because, in real life, I would have had a year or so now until I needed to watch the next series. So I don't think it's too painful to have a slight break from it. Whereas something that I'm trying to consume as quickly as possible is the new series of Only Murders in the Building, which is back on now. I've thoroughly enjoyed the series so far. It's been excellent. And Paul Rudd being in series 3 has been a really welcome addition to the pretty stellar cast that's in it.
I'm not a huge Paul Rudd fan, generally speaking. Like, he's fine, but he's always Paul Rudd.
Yeah.
But in this, he isn't. He actually feels like he's doing a little bit of acting. Mm-hmm. He's almost like Paul Rudd on steroids, almost like he's a bit over the top. And yeah, you are right. He's been a really good addition to the cast for his short run. But I also think Meryl Streep's been very good. And
yeah, she has.
The girl who was in Joyride, the Korean girl in Joyride, his name escapes me. Can't remember.
Yes.
Yeah, they've all been really good. I really like that show anyway. So it's been a really good start to that season. And I want more. I kind of hate having to wait a week for it because it's so digestible. It's brilliant. Stu, what have you been watching?
I was going to say, when he said TV to watch with your missus, I mean, things that I generally don't do, but for some reason, I think during the transfer stuff, and I just wanted some background noise on. Where I was sitting there just looking through my phone and endless transfer stories that didn't involve us. I found this thing on Netflix called Catching Killers. Three series of it. No one's ever heard of it, of course. But they are like these, not even really weird. There's a couple of strange cases, but well, they've got the copper involved who manages to get them in the end, and then they talk to people how the investigation went along, and you think, I don't know why it exists. It's perfect wallpaper TV, but there's something about it, and I thought I can't be getting invested in this stuff. Watch 4 in one day, anyways. But it's on. I can't even say I'll watch it because it's so weird. It is like watching the news, but a bit more of a high production value. But it's all American so far. I don't know the other ones. If he goes anywhere else, I doubt it very much, considering what I've seen so far. But yeah, it's okay. Finished Queer Eye, finally. Excellent as always. And there was a little treat as well. There was some bonus episodes from season 6 that I'd missed out on somehow. They must have come out. There was 4 of them that must have been released afterwards that just never popped up on Netflix whatsoever. So when that thing where it does where it plays the next one and it goes back to one, like if you've watched it on your phone and stopped it halfway and it'll go back to that.
Yeah.
I thought, well, what is it doing? And then I looked and none of them had red bars on them. I thought, it's a nice little discovery. So I finished that off, and then after, I don't know if I talked about Gran Turismo, maybe. I'm amazed at how well it's doing, really. The fact that I didn't like it that much, but maybe it's one of them, maybe I'm too close to it because I love them games and I know that story. But then the more I found out about it, that it was actually the kid in question actually did the stunts for his own film about him, and drove all the parts that he drove in the past. And the fact that there's a wall shirt featured very briefly. It was I think I might have been a bit too hard on it. I still wouldn't say to you to go and watch it because you won't like it. And there was a lot of jankiness in there and a bit of the, again, white men into hip-hop kind of, old men into games kind of thing where people don't talk like this, bro, anymore, if they ever did. But on the plus side of the thing, games to TV-wise, Twisted Metal is fucking awesome. And it really, really is. It's buried on Peacock, sadly, so I don't even know if we can see it. But 10 half-hour episodes, by the people who wrote Deadpool and Zombieland. What more do you need? It's
fun.
It's just, that's all it is. It's just pure fun. It's based on a game that had no real story anyway in the first place, but very, very loosely based on it because it's a completely different premise anyway, other than the name. That Neve Campbell pops up as well, which I didn't expect in the first episode. Yeah, it's just one of them things where for half hour, instead of watching Seinfeld or watching an old episode of Curb again, just give Twisted Metal a chance because it is quite funny.
Awesome. I mean, that's on my list. I've got it ready to go. I just need to get through a few of the TV shows that have already started that I want to finish off first. But yeah, I am looking forward to that one. What have I seen? So I went to see Theatre Camp last week. I heard a review of it. Someone evoked the name of Christopher Guest, who obviously people will know us. This is Spinal Tap, Waiting for Guffman. He's the mockumentary king. And I thought there's absolutely no way this film is going to be anywhere near as good as any of that. Like, that feels wrong to mention his name. And I spent the whole film just fucking giggling throughout it. I don't know if it's because I don't sound close to the source material. Like, I know the theatre world and what it was like to be a kid who liked to do drama and stuff like that. So I sort of recognised some of the tropes of the people in it. But it was wonderful. It was very funny, very silly. But it also had this real heart to it. So the basic outline of the story is a crew were going to make a documentary about this theatre camp and follow the woman who runs the theatre camp. And right at the beginning of their production, she goes into a coma, having had a seizure. So her dipshit son is about to overtake this camp for the summer to get them through. He somehow manages to sell the property so long as they default on their next payment with the bank. And it's all about them trying to make sure that they can get enough money so that they don't default. It's not, you'd think because it's called Theatre Camp, you expect it to be a musical, but it's not really. There's a little bit at the end when they put the play on, there's the odd songs that they've put in there, but there's no musical moments realistically throughout. But it's very funny, and I think you especially, Shu, I think you would really appreciate it. Matt, I know you're a little bit more indifferent towards the musical world, so I don't know if it would be your cup of tea. But as a Spinal Tap fan, you might appreciate the parallels to that style of filmmaking, maybe. But it was really good, and I thought it'll be fine, and I ended up having a right giggle with it, so it was a winner in my books. And the other thing that I've been watching is The Righteous Gemstones. I think there's 3 seasons of it, and I ended up playing through it in a week. It was so enjoyable, digestive, 30-minute episodes that you could just sit there and run throughout. The Righteous Gemstones is about a family of 4. You've got John Goodman, who plays the father figure. Edie Parks, is it? Who plays the daughter. Adam Devine, who you'll know from Pitch Perfect, plays one of the sons, and your man from Eastbound and Down. What's his name? You'll know him, Matt. That's going to bug me. They play the sons and the daughters of this family. They're a televangelist family, but it doesn't really lampoon Christians. It just lampoons hypocrisy. So they're a very rich family who put on Christian shows and everything for the people, but they're all awful human beings. Danny McBride is the other one. Yeah. He wrote a lot of it and everything, so if you like Danny McBride, you'll very much get his sense of humour. Walton Goggins is in it as well with him, but they always seem to be together. But it's a crime series, so the first one starts with Danny McBride's character having been put on film with his friends doing coke and fucking prostitutes, and someone's videotaped them and threatening to expose them to the world. And they're trying to cover all that up while still preaching to be this family of God, but they're actually just despicable bastards. It's very funny because it's got a very comedic cast, but it's also quite nerve-wracking when there's a couple of scenes with violence that really does make you wince, like when they mow down a person in the car. It was excellent, and each series has got this comedic element running alongside a crime story, and it works so well. It's brilliant. It's on Apple TV Plus. It's another one of these shows that probably doesn't get the airplay it deserves because it's on the unfancied streamer of the bunch, but it's well worth checking out. Brilliant, really.
Yeah, I will do. I love anything in relation to, like, I'm not necessarily poking fun at religion, but just that world, like, is something that's up my street, really.
Yeah, like I worried a little bit that it was going to be a case of taking the piss out of Christians, but it doesn't so much as taking the piss out of the people who exploit them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they take their money to put to good causes, but their good cause just happens to be their own bank balance. Like, it's a really good takedown of those people at the top. And as I said to the both of you, I found it quite odd that there was one name that I recognised in the credits, which was David Gordon Green, which was the guy who did the Nick Cage film Joe that we all watched and really enjoyed. Right. So for him to do that and this, I thought was fantastic. So those are the two for myself, which I've really been enjoying in the last couple of weeks. So moving on to our individual questions. Stu, you're up first, please.
Yeah, and this is based on the and again, it's based on the what do we even call him now? Do we just call him Snyder again? Because no one really, people seem to hate him again now. He was in vogue for a bit. His new Netflix film, Rebel Moon, coming out Christmas time, which yet again I'd forgot the name of, and I had to look it up again there. So I thought, well, yeah, I heard obviously the name is a play on Star Wars. Then the trailer that they showed at Gamescom the other week, it looks like Star Wars, which makes you think, well, okay, there's room enough for everyone. Everyone can do their own thing, even if it's blatant plagiarism. But then I got thinking, has there ever been a film that's as obvious of a copy as this is, and it's ever been any good? Andrew?
So, I've doing a bit of searching around and trying to figure it out, because I feel like the obvious answer would be Fast and Furious being a rip-off of Point Break. But there's no one saying that the first Fast and Furious is a good film by any stretch of the imagination. So the one I've gone for, I actually think is a better film than the one it's a copy of. And the film that is copied is Taken, but the film which it's inspired is Nobody. And it's a film that has not had the views it should have, but it's absolutely fantastic.
Oh,
Bob Odenkirk.
Yeah. I haven't seen it. I remember seeing the poster of it and thinking, well, that's not going to work. But carry on.
It's tremendous.
I'm intrigued now.
I think like Taken's aged quite badly in the 5 or so years since it came out. Like it's good for what it was at the time, but Nobody feels like it's taken the tropes from Taken, made them much clearer to the audience, used the R rating to give us actual violence, but also because it's so absurd that it's a nobody person who is actually a secret badass, they lean into the comedic side of it without it being silly comedy. So it's more like dark comedy to it. And it works so much better. Whereas I feel Taken, it tries to be uber serious, and in doing that, kind of loses its edge somewhat. So I think Taken, Nobody saw what Taken done and sort of filled in the gaps to make a much more interesting film. Plus having Bob Odenkirk, because I think Bob Odenkirk does have a little bit of Liam Neeson about him, in that you'd see him and you'd think, well, you're not an action star. And he's not really, but it works really well. So I feel like that Nobody took Taken and just elevated what was already there.
Interesting. Matthew?
So, I've talked about this film before, and I do like it, but it is basically a rip-off of Alien, and that is Life. Basically, crew out in space come across mysterious being destroys the ship, takes over, physically comes out of one of the people's bodies and gets bigger and causes havoc. And no one can hear you scream in space, or whatever the fucking quote is. It's basically the same film, except you don't see Sigourney Weaver in her pants. That's like the only like difference like in this movie. But it's a good movie though, all the same. Like it's a love. I don't know if it's a love letter. That's pretty pretentious, but it's a good film nonetheless, and definitely doesn't get the praise that it should. With an ending that should have led on to more, and I don't think it has. And that's a shame because it's told in such a way, the escalation of the danger throughout the film is done in such a good way that when you get the reveal at the end, it should be another film afterwards. I don't know what it would be called, like Life Lives. I don't know. But yeah, it's it's very, very similar to Alien in many ways. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing.
Yeah, it reminded me a bit like that Skyline, where that was actually really good. When it had no right being really good, and then the sequel came out and it was awful. So in a way, I'm kind of glad there was no sequel to Life. But again, as soon as we walked out of that, you're thinking, well, give it 2 years, and it's never happened.
Shame.
I mean, the closest I could come to this, I mean, Revelman might be brilliant. Who knows? I kind of the fact that he was there at Gamescom and the fact that they're making a game and 2 films of this thing that he's just created from his weird Flashpoint mind. I don't have much hope. But it's on Netflix. We don't have to pay, do we? The other one, again, seems to have been lost to time, which I don't even know if it's any good. And it was caused by what the Matrix did for Black Leather. And it wasn't Underworld. It was the other one. It was Equilibrium.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Which I remember thinking, this was actually pretty cool. But no one talks about it. If you ask anyone under the age of probably 30, I'm guessing they wouldn't. Either A, they wouldn't have heard of it, or 2, if they have, they haven't seen it. Because it's never talked about. It's never shown anywhere. I don't think I even own it or ever have owned it. But when I was looking earlier, I thought, yeah, Equilibrium. We need to bring this back.
Yes, great film. Look, and you are right. I've never heard anyone mention it in like about 12 years, probably even longer than that. Excellent. Right, my question is next, and in honor of Barbenheimer ruling the box office over that reminds me. I saw today they're actually making a film called Barbenheimer, and it's going to be Dr. Barbenheimer, who is a doll model person who creates an atomic bomb to take down the patriarchy. It's going to be like, Snakes on a Train, those kind of terrible films. It's going to be one of those. So I'm kind of looking forward to it. It should be ridiculous.
Snakes on a Train with the infamous line, "Your mother's cunt smells like carpet cleaner."
Yeah. That's horrific.
Goldie owns that DVD.
Jesus.
What an adventure that was.
Anyway, that's by the by. Yeah. So they were inexplicably stricken together at some point over the summer because they were 2 very different films that happened to be released on the same day. So what double header of 2 films that shouldn't go together but actually do would you recommend people watch? Stu?
Well, I'm going to watch this, tomorrow / today when you're listening to this. And that is, the first one is Sound of Freedom. And the other one is Kindergarten Cop. Similar themes. I had no idea how to take me. I could have thrown in Look Who's Talking or something like that. Anything with children not being mutilated and sold into slavery. But Barbenheimer is such an amazing feat of genius. I have no real answer to this question other than that, because it's amazing.
Fair enough.
You broke me.
It's a first. Matt, what have you got for a double header?
Well, I want you to see if you can guess and give a brief pause to the listeners to see if they can guess at home. One is a film about a black person struggling to survive in a white world, and the other is a white person struggling to survive in a black world, and they are both linked by one word in their title.
Ooh. Like my immediate thought was going to be
Trading Places.
no, the Spike Lee film, which we always get the wrong title. The one with Giancarlo Esposito and the likes, where it's A Hot Day in New York. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But it's got more than one word, and I know it's not that one. So
Okay,
probably
let me give you a clue. There is a unit of measurement that is in the title for both of these films.
Units of measurement.
They don't. I can think of pound, but because isn't that the Will Smith film? I can't. I really don't know.
Down to Pound Town, is it?
All right, pause here, dear listener, if you need a time to think about this. But the answer, drum roll please, is the double header is the mile double header, Green Mile and 8 Mile.
Yeah.
That would be the double header. My choice. The story of two fish out of water in their respective worlds, and the differences between those two. I think it would be quite a weird contrast of films, but it was the best I could come up with under the immense pressure of a deadline of recording.
That is an outstanding double header. Actually, I really like that. The film I was thinking of is Do the Right Thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not that one. Okay, right. So my answer. I mean, you could do a triple header on mine if you wanted, but the double header I've got, they're two films which are about memory lapses. One of them is Memento, and the other one is 51st Dates.
Nice. Yeah, I like that.
Like, you couldn't
like
get
that.
two much more completely different films than those two, but the central character in both of them suffers with the same short-term memory loss issue. I think that would work really well, just completely different ends of the spectrum. And 51st Dates, even though it's an Adam Sandler film, it's one of the few Adam Sandler's comedies I think's really good. But then I do like Drew Barrymore, which probably helps somewhat. So I think that would be an outstanding double header because you've got both ends of the spectrum. If you wanted to triple it up, you could throw in After Sun, which is more about the memory of a person's holiday. Fucking heartbreaking that film is, but it's wonderful. But the two I would go with would be Memento and 51st Dates. That's a double header.
Very good. Very good.
My answer about child trafficking suddenly seems a bit wrong.
It's standard for you, though, Stu. Right, Matthew, take us home.
Well, Jurassic Park is getting the 4DX treatment, such as the email from Cineworld tells me. So if you could choose any film to be given the 4DX treatment, what would it be? And for those who don't know, 4DX is basically you're strapped in a chair, it flings you around, it gives, it sprays water in your face, it puts smell in the air, it's a sensory experience kind of thing, such to the point where you're not allowed to have hot food or drink on your persons when you're watching it because you'll scold yourself or get liquid cheese in your eye or something like that. So, with that in mind, Stu, what would be your 4DX film if you could pick any film to get that treatment?
My thing with 4DX is that because it's such an experience, you end up not concentrating on the film as much.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this where that's best two I've experienced in 4DX. The first one was It Part 1, and that was outstanding. Especially how they use the water and things for the looking into the sink and moving the seat so you're looking into things. And the other one was Rogue One, which again, dogfighting, you got to expect it. So I think it's something that I haven't seen for a long, long time, which for the motion and the water and the wind, and yeah, it's a shit film, but Poseidon.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, it might be awful, but with all the extra stuff on top, it could enhance it. I went on that VR roller coaster thing that went completely upside down when I was in the summer, and you look at it and you think, oh, we've done VR roller coasters before, any Seaside 10's got them, but this one doing the whole 360 and going upside down, it added a bit of bit of jeopardy to it, even though there was obviously no real jeopardy because you're strapped in. But it had a complete different effect on it compared to what I thought I would, and I wanted to do it again. Watching an awful film, but having the motion and the wind and the water might make it a better experience. It won't make the film better, but the experience could improve.
Yeah, that's not a bad shout at all. What about you, Andy? Is someone that is, kind of against the gimmick, destroying the art of cinema? What would you like to see that would kind of be enhanced by having someone throw water in your face?
Like, not the whole film. I'd really like the scene from Apocalypse Now, the Ride of the Valkyries, where the helicopters and the loud music. I think that'd be a really cool experience in there. I wouldn't want to be in there for the whole, fucking 8 hours of Apocalypse Now redux. But that scene, I think, would be a fantastic experience. For the whole movie, I think I'd quite like the original Superman, the 78, is it, Superman film that came out. So you've got a bit of everything in that. So you could be flying through the skies with Superman. You could feel the uplifting parts where he's flying through with Lois Lane, the spinning the world back. I don't know how quite they do it, but obviously you could bring in the air flying through your face, and I say face rather than hair, obviously. And whatnot like that. So I think the original Superman would be a good one without it being overly gimmicky. And then there are some scenes where there's water involved as well, where he's got he freezes a lake and holds it over an exploding reactor. So you could bring in the water there. I think there's a bit of everything in the original Superman that would be quite a good one to use for that sort of gimmick.
Yeah, that sounds decent, to be fair. That's not a bad idea. Mine would be, and it's kind of left field because there's very little of this movie that would be useful for this format, but I think when you then got it, I think would be excellent. It would be more about like the smells and the stuff would be part of the main bits of it, but but specifically Rocky 2, because the fight scenes are so over the top. Like any one of the punches landed would be enough for a knockout in the heavyweight division. But like the being jolted around and the hit with sweat and everything like that, the fight sequences would just be really excellent. Like every jab, like your seat jerks back and you're thrown around, and it makes you feel like you're part of the fight, so to speak. I think would just be a really interesting experience, and one that would kind of enhance especially like as the films go on in the series, where they're less about the quality of film and more about being B-movie-esque. Because Rocky 4 is a lot of people's favourites, but it's not a good film. It's that. You know what I mean? So I think the Rocky films would be, or Rocky 2 specifically, would be one of my favourites. I mean, even if it was Rocky 3 and when he hits Thunderlips with the chair and you could get like jolted around with that, when he gets thrown up and he's in like a military press and he gets thrown around, like any of that would be amazing in 4DX, I think.
Outstanding.
I mean, the ones in Birmingham I haven't been to the Bentley Bridge one, so I'm not sure. But the ones in Birmingham have that ability to have pressure at points on your back. So you could feel like you are being punched.
So that's what I mean. Like, it'd be a really good, like, an experience, I think.
When you said, Matt, like they'd have to introduce the smells and stuff, I thought, he's going to go with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. So when you came out with Rocky 2, that was not what I was expecting. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory could be quite a fun one to be in there if you bought some smells. You got Augustus Gloop going into the chocolate, and you could get the water in there, the Great Glass Elevator. That could be quite a fun one to do as well, thinking about it.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, now you've said this, you're going to have to go and watch Wonka.
Yeah. I probably will. In
4DX.
No. I mean, I'd be amazed if they did that in 4DX. It doesn't... Well, then again, you never know what they're going to do it with. But I don't know. I'll probably see it, if for no other reason there's fuck all else out during that period of time with Ghostbusters being moved back.
And Hugh Grant.
I mean, that is the highlight of the trailer, isn't it, Hugh Grant? Oh, Stu, we saw Spider-Man in 4DX at Bentley Bridge.
Oh, yeah.
If you remember, I sat in front of you, randomly booked the seat right in front of you without knowing.
It didn't really do anything there, did it? It was a waste of time.
Shit.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Shit 4DX.
I completely forgot about it. A lot of them, because they're not designed with it in mind.
Limitless, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like, well, I think, let's just sway from side to side. You could do that in an asylum.
Mm.
You don't have to pay the extra £4 to do that. It just wasn't very good. That's why I watched Doctor Strange. Yeah, it was the last one. Multiverse of Madness. I watched that in 4DX because the other super screen had sold out, or I couldn't get the showing at the time I needed that day. So I went in and I thought I'd give it a chance. But the wind machine is still too powerful for the sound. So you can just hear it all the time.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's no point. To be fair, there was no Curse of Andy that day. Everyone was completely silent watching it. So that wasn't an issue. But you had to really concentrate to hear what was going on, because you had this noise coming from the fans up the top. And you think, well, just turn it up a bit so that no one cares.
Mm. To be fair, though, I do think Jurassic Park is a decent film to put in that setting.
Yeah.
As long as they don't go over the top, throwing you about too much. But just feeling the tremors and stuff through the chair would be a really cool thing to do. But as ever, it'll likely be lifting you up and throwing you about the place and just going over the top. Will you be going to see Jurassic Park, either of you?
I will, for sure, yeah. Yeah, I think, I've never had so much fun in the cinema not seeing a comedy than when I saw The Matrix 20th anniversary, whatever it was, in 4DX. That scene when Morpheus gets out of the chains and runs across when Neo's got a Gatling gun and he's fucking shooting it. The water's coming down. When that Gatling gun goes off, I was literally just being thrown around. There's water coming down. I was just giggling like a schoolgirl. It was so much fun. Being in that film was excellent. So, if anything's like that, I'd have a great time with it. You're not gonna do it for every film. It'd be once every 6 months or something. But yeah, I had a great time with it.
Yeah, I might too. I mean, I haven't done one of these at all. One of these watch an old film in the cinema things. Again, like you said earlier, Andy, the way there's new things to watch. But other than The Sound of Freedom, which I'm watching tomorrow, so I did look. I thought, well, what else is that? And I thought, well, Blue Beetle. Yeah, I'll fit that in as well while it's there. There ain't anything else, and we might be in this lull period. And how good the 3D transfer that was for Jurassic Park, which looks like, and again, Spielberg said in the documentary afterwards that it was filmed with 3D from a 3D perspective, not with 3D in mind, of course, 'cause it didn't exist then, and that's why it looks so good. And it looks better than a lot of the real 3D transfer films that we've seen in the last 20 years. So if they do the same thing again with this stuff, then I wouldn't rule it out. I wouldn't say yes right now, but if it's there and there's nothing else on, then I'm more than happy to give it a go, because I love that film.
I mean, I don't know if there's anything released, so I might give it a go. As I said to you both the other day, I wasn't a huge fan of it when I saw it when I was younger, but I do recognise that it's one I probably need to watch again now to see if I still feel the same. I can't say I'm going to rush to see it, but I don't think there's anything out this coming Friday, so I might go and treat myself. I might go in there, sit in the dark for a few hours and see if my opinion's changed on that film at all. Right then, so that's all our questions done. Moving on to our podcast next week, we're going back to an Oliver Stone directed film. I'm hoping it's going to be better than the World Trade Center, was it called? I can't even remember what that film was. 9/11 dog shit that he directed. This one is Snowden. IMDb describes this film as the NSA's illegal surveillance techniques are leaked to the public by one of the agency's employees, Edward Snowden, in the form of thousands of classified documents distributed to the press. Check out justwatch.com to see where it is streaming near you. I had never even heard of this film until a few weeks ago when I was looking at what we need to do next. Do either of you know Snowden? I mean, the story was fairly big when it happened, but do you remember the film being released?
Oh, I don't remember I remember the story. I don't remember that. Never even heard of the film about it. So
Me neither.
when I just looked it up in 2 hours 14, I thought, what?
Oh yeah, it's getting watched on 1.5 speed without a shadow of a doubt. Did you know this one, Matt, or is this a bit
No,
of...
I didn't know it was released either. So, I mean, yeah. Hopefully I can watch it and not fall asleep because like that. But yeah, I mean, we do these things for you, dear listener. So there we go.
It has got a semi-decent write-up on IMDb, so fingers crossed we'll actually enjoy this one. But yeah, justwatch.com to see where it's streaming. If you've seen that film, get in contact, because I've, like I said, never even heard of it, let alone seen it before. You can get in contact with us at cagefightingpod@gmail.com on the emails or on the socials at cagefightingpod. Please make sure that you're subscribed to us on whatever podcaster that you're listening to us on. And if you could leave us a review there as well, we would love you forever. Finally, thank you so much for giving us your time this week. It is truly appreciated. So for this week, Matt, would you like to say goodbye?
Take it easy, everybody. Hope you've enjoyed what has been a bit of a bumper episode. Thank you for sticking with us. Have a great week ahead, and stay safe out there in the world.
Stu, would you like to say goodbye?
I didn't realise how long we'd actually been recording for until I just mentioned it.
Neither
Look, why am I so tired? Goodbye, everyone. Don't buy Christmas stuff yet. Don't encourage them. Keep it special. Ta.
It's goodbye from me, and remember, be excellent to each other.